Hey, Bigpod.
What?
We're gatekeeping Rust developers from Linux again.
Oh no. What again?
Cue the music. Hey guys, it's your future Rust shell crustacean boy Josh because a poll decided that I need to learn how to write Rust. Welcome to No Tucks Allowed, and I am joined with my wonderful host today, Bigpod.
Hello.
And Bigpod, it is a true poll. If you go to my Mastodon instance, you can see where I took this learn to code poll. I selected from 8 options. 2 of them were memes. One of them being Emacs Lisp, the other one being how to exit Vim. And it turns out people really wanted me to learn how to write C or Golang, but Rust was the inevitable winner in the third poll.
What were other options? Now I don't know.
Let's see. This is where I gotta go back and look now. I think one of them was Zig.
Okay. So
Scrolling.
Go.
Okay. So C, Rust, Go, Lisp, Zig, and D.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And Rust won.
And Rust won.
Okay.
To be fair,
so you won't have to deal with the amazing dependency system with Go. That's a lucky thing for you. But you have to deal with the amazing everything from Rust.
Yes. I've done like surface level things, and so far I'm getting massive Node.js vibes from Cargo.
And like the only good thing about Rust is Cargo.
Yeah.
And
So
yes, I probably should learn Rust sooner or later. I know Go, and like I know Go way too much than I would want to. But I know Go, and it's like my go-to language. But Rust is a low-level language I want to learn, because despite me hating it, I hate all the other low-level languages even more. So C and C++, I hate you very, very, very much.
What, you don't like memory management and pointers in C?
No. And when it
Darn.
comes to C++, I learned C++ in school, so
And
I
you're
hate
probably
it
still
a lot.
learning C++ because you never stopped learning C++.
Yes. I don't learn C++ anymore because I stopped.
Oh, okay.
And C just reminds me of C++ way too much, so no thank you.
Well, C++ is an extended framework of C.
That's
So,
the problem.
Speaking of programming languages, there's been some kernel news this week here in the world of Linux. Not Tux, Linux. We're talking about Linux, not
Yes.
Tux.
Yes. Talking
So,
about a kernel, not a penguin.
Yes. So, Hector Martin, the lead developer behind the Asahi Linux project, is stepping down from his kernel maintainership role.
Yeah.
And he dropped this message just earlier today about this. So this is breaking news. We need like a big flashy breaking news CNN breaking news segment playing like right here or something like that. Big Bad. We need to come up with that one of these days. So he drops this message. I no longer have any faith left in the kernel development process or community management approach. Apple ARM development will continue downstream. If I feel like sending some patches upstream in the future myself, or whatever subtree I may or may not, anyone who feels like fighting the upstream fight themselves is welcome to do so. Now, we need some context here. Bigpod, you did some fine reading in this mailing list earlier.
Yes.
Can we get like a breakdown as to like how what happened here?
So there is this thing in one of the other kernel parts called DMA coherent allocator. So essentially, I have no idea what it does. I know that DMA is direct memory access, and that's when my knowledge stops, because I'm
Well, you
not,
see, that's about us every time we talk about kernel development.
that's I know the words. I don't know what they do. I know it allocates memory probably, and coherency is some principle.
And it does it dynamically.
Yes. Well, one of the developers, Christoph Helwig, said, "No rusting kernel/DMA, please." And that cascaded into a giant drama. And end of the drama was Mr. Hector Martin, also known as Markan, stepping down from maintaining the kernel subtree for Asahi Linux. So, what do you think about Rust in kernel, Josh?
So, I have been watching this on a very surface level for a while, since from the initial proposal of adding Rust support to the Linux kernel to what we have today. It started off, what was it, 3 years ago that this first started coming around as an idea? 4 years ago, somewhere around there?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So initially, what it is that back in the day, the Linux kernel used to be primarily written in C. Specifically, I think it's like C. I don't think that they're on C24 right now. They're on a prior version of the C standard, but
yeah.
that's what it's primarily written in, and they're using a very archaic method for Git, for managing Git. So not only do you have to learn C, but you also have to learn the essentials of Git as Git was intended to be used back in the 90s. Because, that's what Linus does, so that's what he forces everybody else to do.
And you have to learn mailing lists.
Yeah, so there was this compounding issue of things you needed to learn how to even first of all submit a patch. Yes. So Linus just floated the idea of, hey, maybe we should look at adding support for other languages in the Linux kernel project, if anything, to remove one barrier of entry from contributing to the Linux kernel.
Yeah,
because GitHub is a thing that exists, and there are some people that only know how to use GitHub for contributing to open source code.
Yeah,
it's a little different with Linux. Now, anyways, since then there's been it went through a section of debate and ultimately got approved, and now we have a small community we have the small but very vocal community going around in the Linux kernel developers, where they're anti-Rust, and in fact, normally you hear about the people that are pushing to rewrite everything in Rust. These are the people wanting to rewrite everything in C.
Yes.
And this is where they met and they don't like each other. So,
what this is about is people who want to do Rust things would like to have a API, Rust native API for this DMA coherent allocator, essentially an abstraction over the C API. Problem is that this Christoph Helwig doesn't want Rust anywhere near the DMA code, which became a problem because the first question was, what do you suggest then? And that question came from Miguel Ojeda, I don't know. Sorry if I butchered your name. If you're angry, mail at me, please. And Christoph again said, keep the wrappers in your code instead of making life painful for others. We're gonna go why he thinks painful in a little bit. Before that, another main actor in this story, Danilo Kramrich. I probably butchered your name as well. And I butchered the word as well, so don't worry, I butcher everything. Who asked very reasonable questions throughout the story, in my opinion. But he asked, what does your code mean? Duplicated in every driver? Otherwise, Rust kernel DMA.rs sounds reasonable, no? And that's the point. That's kind of thing. They need these DMA coherent allocator bindings anyway. Whether they every time implement it in a driver or they have an API that is common to every driver. But apparently that idea isn't okay to Christoph. And at that point, Christoph said, yes, interface to DMA API should stay in readable C and not in weird bindings so that it remains grippable and maintainable. It was, based on my understanding, it was never meant to be like change from C to Rust. Rust would be a separate thing that would use that C API. But why would it need to be greppable, Josh?
Well, trying to wrap my head around what we're talking about here, because I was distracting myself reading this email list at the same time. I apologize, sir.
Let me quote Christoph Helvig again. Yes, interfaces to the DMA API should stay in readable C code and not in weird bindings, so that it remains greppable and maintainable. For those of you who do not understand, greppable means able to use the command grep on it.
Yeah.
So why would they need to do that?
I would assume so they can find something. Because that's what I use grep for, is finding things.
Because some developers on kernel still use grep to move around the code.
Yep.
I don't understand those people, but then again, I use VS Code, so what do I know at the end of the day? These people are chads compared to me.
Yeah, now, before we continue reading through this mailing list here, Bigpod, you've delved into world programming a heck of a lot more than me.
Yes.
And you've probably had to interface with a couple different projects that, mix these languages together.
Yes.
I am certain that you've ran into bad examples and good examples of how this should be done.
Yes.
Now, at a very surface level, could you explain what Christoph Helwig is potentially suggesting Rust is doing to the kernel versus what is actually happening?
The way I read this last message from him is that he thinks that the C code should be replaced with Rust code, which at this point isn't what Rust people are actually advocating for. They are advocating that things should stay in C, but should have bindings in Rust, which is the correct way to do this. If you have a multi-language project, it can be done very easily if you do a tiny bit of separation, which in kernel is already done because every developer has their own tree anyway. So you have a part that is specifically this language, part that is this language, and then you have the central piece that all of it works off of, that is decided to be this one specific language. That's what DMA C API is. That one predetermined language. Now you create bindings for all other languages to work off of.
Okay, so what you're saying is that basically you have your wonderful C code, and it's just exposing these things that Rust can hook into and make use of, right?
Yes, and then on top of that you make a library in Rust that makes those hooks and attaches themselves to them and makes it more friendly to those Rust developers. Or if you're using, I don't know, Zig, or for that matter, if it's not a kernel project, C#, or JavaScript, or Python, or C++, or not C++, but any other language. That's what you should be doing.
So what Danilo is saying here is that if Christoph doesn't feel comfortable maintaining the Rust abstractions or just doesn't want to, that's fine. Nobody expects Christoph to do that.
Yes.
That's everybody else's job.
That's their job as Rust people.
That's quite literally what he said. And they're like, yep, that's makes sense to me. But Christoph had to respond. Don't force
me to deal with your shiny language of the day. It's not a shiny language of the day, by the way, since it's 3 years in the making.
It's been around for a while.
More. Maintaining multi-language project is a pain I have no interest in dealing with. If you want to use something that's not C, be that assembly or Rust, you write to C interfaces and deal with the impedance mismatch yourself as far as I'm concerned. That's exactly what they're saying they're gonna do. They just want to have an abstraction layer that is common to every Rust driver, but you're blocking that, my friend.
Yeah. So, anyways, at this point, the thread starts to spiral because now more people are getting involved, and all of a sudden, the idea of brigading people on social media is coming around. And then Greg KH comes in and gets involved, talking about some tooling issues, and we even got Linus Torvalds, the Lord and Master of Linux himself, getting involved.
And that's where our main man of the topic, Hector Martin, comes in, because that's actually onto whose message Linus latches onto, because at that point Hector Martin starts with like a message. First of all, is actually starts very sane with words. If Linus doesn't pipe up with an authoritative answer to this thread, Miguel and the other Rust folks should just merge this series once it's reviewed and ready. This is actually okay. And he continues, ignoring Christoph's overt attempt at sabotaging the project. It's actually a good thing to do. Like, just go ahead. If there is no direct no answer, that should just be merged in, and then Linus can do whatever he wants. He also said that Rust folks, please don't waste your time with such people, because this drama is not good. But and also, Christoph did say before that the mentioned cancer, that this Rust in kernel code is cancer, for which in my opinion Hector overreacted quite a bit, because he said, in my opinion, the cancer comment from Christoph would be enough to qualify for code of conduct action, but I doubt anything of the sort will happen, which really starts to precede the whole stepping down. Like, the ball started rolling at this point. At this point, knowing who Hector Martin is, at this point I was already, what will happen at the end is Hector Martin will be stepping away. And while I was preparing the articles and looking for links for this episode, I found a nice article that says Hector Martin is stepping away from Linux maintainership. So I was right. And honestly, I'm sad about it, because no matter what he did maintain a great and important piece of kernel code, Asahi Linux, especially because it was in kernel, not an out of 3 thing, which is always a pain in the ass, because Linux kernel is really not well made for out of 3 things, which I think is a giant mistake for the kernel. That should be fixed in short order. That should be, in my opinion, before any other thing, that should be one of the first major tasks for them, to actually make out of 3 modules easy to be installable. Like, why in the hell do you just install use an installation file on Windows and you have a driver like it's nothing? Why couldn't you do that? Like, couldn't that easily do that on Windows or on Linux? But I'm rambling on an off-topic thing, so let's continue. And of course, as Josh said, Greg Hartman, for those who do not know, that's number 2 in Linux, also had a few things to say. And yes, that he cannot answer for Linux, but that at this current point, know that nothing is set in stone, and things are on case by case basis on how builds are happening and how rejections of commits are happening, because that was one of the big problems C people were worried about, that if Rust, not the Christoph guy, but every other C people, so that was involved, that if Rust people have this abstraction, and this abstraction isn't in exact lockstep with C version, will Linux block the commits for the C version that makes Rust version not work? And at that point, you see Linux get in, and based on what I can see, he says nothing about the C Rust issue.
I assume that probably because he just wants nothing to do with it. So
honestly, from what I understand, he doesn't care about that stuff. He is okay with Rust being in kernel, but he doesn't care about all the infighting that happens because C people are overly, how to say this, to not insult the great people who maintain the Linux kernel.
don't bite the hand that feeds.
No, the overly protective of the C components and think that Rust components will just eat them. But then again, I'm also the person who thinks that Linux kernel should have 5 different bindings in there for as many low languages as possible. Whether it be
JavaScript.
Zeek, that's not a low level language. Whether it be Zeek, whether it be Carbon, whether it be Rust, C, anything.
Well,
As long as
with as much support as Rust got for the Linux kernel, I could actually potentially see Zig showing up in the future because the one thing that I learned that Zig can do really well is just use C libraries.
Yes, C compatibility in interactivity is really good with Zeek.
Yeah, so that might actually be something worthwhile to look into adding to the kernel. That said, you got to find Zig developers that are like actual developers and not hipsters.
Yes, but that's an entire problem of its own. Then you have some other problems with what Hector Martin poking the Linux, and like how Linux development is centralized and yada yada. The non-important issues that all preceded the news we talked about at the start. Hector Martin stepping down because he doesn't believe in kernel. How good
He doesn't like how kernel
development
is working because he prefers he prefer that it worked his way.
Yes,
To some extent.
yes.
So I think we've pretty much exhausted this topic at this point, Bigpod. So let's
agree.
talk about like another issue in the space of desktop Linux, mostly specifically. So Equinix is a company that likes to sell things, and they have been packaging. They had like this division that they called the metal division, which was basically like they sold rack space and bare metal servers that you could rent from, rather than having to deal with a virtualized system or anything like that. Well,
Yeah.
they've decided to end that service, and that quickly became a problem because guess who happens to use that service, Bigpod?
Freedesktop and Alpine Linux, just among 2 of them.
Yeah. Now, first of all, this is a big deal. If you're a desktop Linux user, this is a big deal
Yes.
because Freedesktop is responsible for a lot of things. But let's talk about Alpine Linux first, right?
Yeah.
Because Bigpod, I know that you have lots of experience with Docker.
Yes.
And guess what's used in Docker a lot?
For some unknown reason.
Yeah, it
For
happens
some-
to be Alpine.
Absolutely unknown reason to me, because it's absolutely annoying and I absolutely hate it.
Oh, come on. You don't like that your package manager doesn't support dependency resolution? Or at least it didn't when,
It
I
does
last looked at it.
now. It
Yeah,
does now. The problem is that most images are MUSL, and even if they're not, something about their images makes specifically Go, which I have most experience with, when it comes to Alpine, not do DNS resolution correctly. And it's not Go specifically. It's something about Alpine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I always do this when I deal with Alpine and Go. And this may sound really badly for you. This was me hitting my microphone because it's not as hard as my desk. So I feel safer doing it.
Oh, you don't have the steel desk like I do?
Yeah. And more importantly, you audio people at least heard something.
Yeah, now, for like the other side, the desktop side?
Yeah.
Freedesktop, that foundation does a lot of work. For
Yes.
one thing, they are the hosting service for Xorg, as well as Wayland, as well as Pipewire, as well as Pulse Audio.
As well as on their GitLab, you see WL roots, you see many projects.
A lot of things. And
Yes.
they're also the foundation that maintains the various XDG standards that we make use of. Like the XDG file standard, which is, just ls your root, and that's what that is.
As soon as you see XDG, that means it's Freedesktop.
Yeah. If you're like on your Ubuntu, just app search XDG. I'm certain
Yes.
that you will see a lot of things that they work with.
The whole idea of the desktop directory, documents directory, pictures directory in your home folder. That's XDG.
That is the specification that they maintain.
Yes, and a program that does that as well. It's also called XDG something.
Yeah, XDG user dirs.
Yes. Do you want to know what else is XDG, or was XDG, and now is something else?
WireGuard?
No.
No.
There is this thing that used to be called XDG app,
Oh, FlatHub or Flatpaks. Yeah.
and it's Flatpak. Yes.
You know what? Flatpak is a better name.
Yes. It's used to be called XDG-app.
It was called XDG-app, and the Flatpak runtime was called like XDG Unix runtime or something like that.
Probably.
It made no sense whatsoever. Flatpaks are just like they're a fancier name for us consumers.
Yeah, it's a better name. But yes, like XDG or Freedesktop protocols, like think about Cairo, libcairo, Mesa. Any kind of video acceleration on Linux is very likely under XDG. Dbus, FreeType, GStreamer.
If you
libinput.
If you like media, your keyboard, anything related to graphics, you probably like these guys.
Yeah.
So, anyways, with Equinix shutting down, they need to move and figure out. I think we don't have a date yet for when Equinix is shutting down this service. And,
I believe
they might be giving. They might be willing to give Freedesktop a bit of that olive branch time extension if they really need it. But
I think I remember hearing a date, but can't remember it right now. I can't remember it at the moment, so no.
Yeah, so for the record as to how big this project is, they laid out basically what they need from a hosting service. 400 gigs worth of database storage. That's mostly Git commits.
Yeah.
And 100 terabytes of raw storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something like 70 terabytes not terabytes, but petabytes of like bandwidth.
On the other hand, Alpine uses about 800 terabytes of bandwidth monthly.
Yeah, So, uh, they need a serious web host, and I don't think Hetzner's got quite the infrastructure for it.
Yes.
So,
Since I mentioned, they also host their own GitLab, which means they're gonna probably need quite a bit of a cluster to run that for any kind of serious usage they have.
yeah.
So yeah, if you are a server provider, first contact them and get them that server space, especially have enough. Then you can also contact us for a sponsorship.
I mean, we're currently
If you
hosted
want
on
to.
Linode, so
Yes.
if you're a web host and you're willing to at least offer us free services, that way I don't have to pay money, I'm cool with that.
Yes, and you're gonna have your logo on every month you pay for it on the podcast. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. That said, don't be if you're not a web hoster, but instead you're just an average listener, and you think that you kind of want to help out freedesktop.org, they do take donation through PayPal.
Yeah. Apparently, it's also WireGuard that has the same problem.
Well, I would assume that WireGuard is hosted on like a. I don't know if WireGuard is a free desktop project.
No.
Right.
Okay. Here at the bottom of the article is after the initial publication of this post, Jason Donenfeld, founder of WireGuard, told Ars by email that WireGuard is in the same situation, as in given credits by Equinix Metal and scrambling to find a new host and is accepting donations and hosting offers. Again, another great project you should consider donating to. My guess is they probably, if nothing else, they use builders. So the thing that builds your program
That way you're not having to
for
run.
testing.
That way you're not having to run those make commands on your local system.
Yes, and because you should probably automate builds anyway, because every commit should be built and tested, and you have automated tests which just run when you commit. So you need a computer that those tests run on. Those are called runners. And yes, for that you need computers, VMs, containers, depending on what kind of environment you use, and that kind of costs money, a lot of it, especially if you need more hardware than
So
the cloud provides.
Maybe instead of paying for a subscription service for a month, maybe you just reallocate like $5 to free desktop, because
Yes.
every now and then it's good to support like that one solo independent developer that's in the middle of Nebraska carrying like the backbone of the entire internet on his back in his spare time. But every now and then, like these bigger, fancier projects, throw them a couple bucks too.
Yeah.
So, Bigpod, and moving on here, I went on an adventure this week.
Really?
Yes, because the last time we recorded, I had this wonderful, beautifully installed Gen 2 system. It was working wonderfully. And then, my brother was having issues with a video game. And I'm like, okay, well, for the record, for the listener, I treat all my installations as disposable, so I don't mind blowing up installations to, help a bro.
Good.
Yeah. So I'm not upset that, I deleted Gen 2. But it involved me installing Microsoft Windows. Now, I have probably freshly purchased on Windows 10 release day that little USB key that Microsoft would sell you for like $100. So I've got one of those. That's what I tried first to install with. Well, because my system uses fancy Intel Arc graphics, I can't even get basic display drivers working. So
installed.
That release day Windows 10 image that I have, probably not going to be any good. So we go to Microsoft and try to download from there. Well, Microsoft cannot complete the download request at this time. It has been saying that for 2 weeks now, so I'm convinced that it just doesn't work.
Interesting.
At least for me.
Well, I can tell you it works because right before the episode started recording, I did just that. I downloaded Windows 11 installer.
Oh, well, it's working for somebody. So, in continuing my adventure here, I eventually found off of Google search this website called Softronic, which is one of those sketchy websites that I don't know if they're legit, but they did offer they did offer a Windows download for me. So it's like, whatever. This is disposable anyway, so we downloaded it. So, and then I flash it to the USB key using Well USB, which is like the only way that I've been able to figure out how to get Windows to boot. And it booted, yes. But this time, as I was selecting the disk for Windows to install to, it would immediately crash. And it did it quite reliably. And I've never seen Windows installer actually blue screen before. And it gave like that classic old school blue screen.
Oh, really? They used the old school blue screen in the installer.
It gave me the old school blue screen that actually kind of told me what was going on.
Well,
you know, where it gives you that big long error message that you just type into Google to no solution whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this is not a live system. This is an installer.
Well, what I came to finally is that Windows should be relegated to a VM, which ironically is the same thing they came to at Microsoft, because they put Windows in a VM when you install Windows.
Yeah.
Of course, still Windows. They install Windows onto your host, so I don't know if what they did was good or bad, but yeah. Because the reason I know that is because I had hypervisor errors on my previous install of Windows.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which I don't understand how that is possible if it was on Metal hardware or Metal OS. Yeah. So I did the smart thing and I put it inside a VM. It hasn't crashed once yet.
Well, to be fair, in my project here, I eventually decided, you know what, I need a working computer. So we installed Solus because, you know, they just announced an ISO release. So that's what I'm running, and I'm recording this episode for you today on. And I forgot, like, how kind of cool this distro actually is, Solus. I mean, it's not immutable, so I know that you're never going to use it, Bigpod. But, you know, it's fairly well developed.
I'm using Pop OS.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're using Pop OS right now, which, you know, just it's Ubuntu LTS under the hood. We all know that you just like things nice and stale.
Yes, because if I need anything newer, I can go Flatpak, or I can just install it inside a distro box.
Yeah, you could do that too. So, anyways, I installed Solus. I had to remember how to use EO package because, you know, I decided to use that, and then I discovered that, hey, you can actually use KDE Discover now. So they got the package kit backend finally working, which means that they're actually working on their package manager for the first time in like 7 years.
Great.
Or a package manager solution, because I know that they really don't like EO package, but nobody else wants to fix it. Now, that was my adventure. I am probably going to be getting off this distro before too long anyway, because, you know, there's still a couple packages that I really enjoy using that are just not available on this, that I know that are available on other distros. So
I really wonder, why have you never made your own custom distro? I don't mean custom distro as in custom distro, but as in custom repo. Just collect packages from all different sources and put them in a single repo.
I'm starting to wonder that myself, because I do have a private repository just for Arch Linux.
And if you're willing to pay, I'm sure I can find somebody who can make you build servers.
I can do that myself, don't worry. It's just cron jobs.
Not actually. Like doing doing proper CI/CD, which you should at that point do, so you can collect logs and all that. You need a bit more than just cron jobs.
but be lazy and just get into a cron job.
Well, you have tools for that are far better and can do things on a dynamic scale, like on any amount of servers you want. That's the CI/CD. That's what I do.
Yeah. So, you the listener, what's my next distro that I fool around with? It has to use Wayland. Sorry, I can't use Xorg because Intel Arc graphics. So that's the key. So we gotta have a very modern kernel because I want to use the B580 because I'm still testing it and it's working wonderfully except for like two games that just don't work on it, that work on the A770. But we're working on troubleshooting that with my good buddies over there with the Intel driver team because they still remember who I am.
Of course, of course they do. You are 50% of their a user base.
Maybe. So, anyways, we've got that going, and how you tell me what distro I'm using is by sending us an email. Just send it to contact@tuxbase.com. That actually sends an email to not just me, though. That sends it to also Bigpod, who can then criticize you for your choice of distro. Because, that's what Bigpod does for a living. And, if your name is Steve and you're living in Lebanon and you want Josh to install Zero Linux, you got to send me an ISO because I lost mine. And, of course, if you would like to join our show's community, we have a Discord. That's going to be linked in the description because we don't have a URL shortcode because I'm not willing to pay Discord for that yet. And, of course, if you would like to support the show, go to patreon.com/notuxallowed. Give us a couple dollars there. We are almost a quarter of the way to our goal for being self-sufficient.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're getting somewhere in life, Bigpod.
Then we're gonna double that for the self-sufficient on the editing department.
Yeah, and
which might become soon 4 times that of one-time purchase. So please donate.
Yeah. So and if you can't find like the show at all, just go to tuxbase.com. That'll give you links to basically everywhere you need to go. And if you want to reach us on like more modern platforms that don't use this thing called email, or you don't want to comment on YouTube, you can go to these links right here. These are our Fediverse IDs, our Mastodon things, your threads, or like your Pleroma post or your Misskey post if you're weeb enough for that. So you can get us in contact with those through those IDs right there. And, of course, we also have our own individual YouTube channels, youtube.com/10leej and youtube.com/bigpod.
Yeah.
I actually have a video.
Really?
Yes.
I don't.
Well, you see, I went to go upload it, and I forgot that I had background music that was playing while I was recording, and I did not filter it out. So it got monetization claimed, and like, maybe we need to redo that video.
Yeah.
So anyways, guys, that's it for this episode of No Tux Allowed. We'll see you next week, and maybe, just maybe, I'm going to install Open Mandriva.
Goodbye.